once again, and welcome to the Catholic View for Women, our show with news and views from a truly Catholic perspective. I'm Teresa Tomeo, and I also host a daily radio program here on the EWTN radio network called The Catholic Connection. And with me are my two wonderful co-hosts, Astrid Bennett Gutierrez, who is with Hispanics for Life, and Janet Morana. Of course, you know her from the show Defending Life, which she co-hosts here in EWTN. But she's also the co-founder of the wonderful Silent No More Awareness Ministry, as well as the executive director of Priests for Life. Now, this is a topic that every single woman out there can relate to.
Absolutely.
Body image blues. I actually have a chapter in my book, Extreme Makeover, about this, and this is a huge topic.
It really is. You know, and what really the media and all the clothing stores and the magazines do, whether it's very young girls or even for us older people, the images that they show and some of the clothes, it's just not edifying for us. And it also makes us feel like, you know, I always struggle, you know, with weight and trying to exercise and watch what I eat and things. But when you look at these things, it looks like everyone's supposed to be like super, like skinny, you know, and it's, and then of course some of the clothes, they're so immodest. I mean, the necklines are so plunging and the skirts hemline up, and it's like, and this is the image you're supposed to have. And I think it starts also too with the very young girls. When I see in grammar schools now, the clothing, you know, that they have for young girls.
Well, try to go, you have a granddaughter now, try to go, and even some of the suggestive messages they have on clothes for toddlers.
Toddlers, yes.
It's crazy.
Yes. It's a disordered fixation on the body, and also an exploitation of women, you know, for profit. Sexualizing young girls. We have the controversies of companies like Abercrombie and Fitch, where they're creating Victoria's Secret, creating clothing for young, very, very young girls, and which you can see how that could lead to, you know, sexual abuse and human trafficking, all these things.
Well, it's all tied together.
It's all tied together. Or in the other spectrum, saying we will not make clothing for people who are a certain weight, and you're not cool if you're overweight. Things like that we're getting messages.
Not even overweight though, right? Because now they say that size 0 is the new size 8.
Yes.
And if you look at some of the models, if you ever watch any of the fashion shows, or even if you open a magazine, as you said, I mean, they are in dire need of a salami sandwich, as I always say. So these models, I mean, it's seriously?
Or a slice of pizza.
Exactly. I mean, it's crazy. It's not healthy.
Yeah.
And so what happens, we're getting all these messages all the time, and women and younger girls are thinking, and then you have the whole aspect of pornography, which fits in, but we're going to talk about that in another episode, but who feel that they simply cannot live up to these images. Let me give you just a few statistics, and again, you'll find a lot of details in my book, Extreme Makeover, Women Transformed by Christ, Not Conformed to the Culture, and it's in the chapter entitled Body Image Blues. Average age for dieting in this country for young girls, what do you ladies think? What age?
Well, I mean, I would think, you know, 14.
8.
Now, is that ridiculous?
8.
What 8-year-old needs to be on a diet?
The average age for a young girl to begin dieting is 8 years old. The majority of 10-year-olds in this country admit to being afraid of being fat. And there was a fascinating report that came out several years ago by the Dove Soap Company called Real Truth About Beauty, and where they interviewed women. It's gotten a lot of play, and they have a whole campaign that they've done that's very good. Women around the world interviewed, and these were women in countries like ours that were developed countries, such as Great Britain, Japan, Brazil. Majority of the women surveyed said they do not consider themselves beautiful, and they would have a hard time calling themselves beautiful. Now imagine that. With all the advances that women have made, right, and the opportunities that we have, they're still saying, I'm not good enough, I don't add up. And
Well,
that's from the evil one, to keep us down.
And also too, they keep raising the bar. I mean, when you look at the images, again, in the magazines and in the movies and in Hollywood, I mean, everyone, they all have facelifts, Botox, all this artificial stuff. And of course, you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you say, oh, well, you know, I'm getting some lines and wrinkles. I mean, I'm not going to do Botox. I'm not going to do these things. You know, it's just not something I would want to do. But the images, it's so false out there, and all this fake stuff. And so therefore you feel you're not pretty, or you know, and it's just
and that's
very
the
bad.
question as Catholics. How do we evaluate this? How do we protect ourselves? Because we're really bombarded. We can't help it. You can't even drive down the freeway without seeing images that somehow affect your psyche. So how do we as Catholics evaluate it? Because beauty actually is a good. You know, God created us all different, unique, and so beauty is something that, objectively speaking, is something that can be lauded. So it's not something bad. So how do we as Catholics celebrate our own individuality? How do we use our gifts and what God has given to us, whether it's physical or spiritual, personality-wise, to bless the world, to be a light for the world? And in the year of faith, we think about that as well, is being a light, being salt of the earth. So how do we as Catholics, because there's a Catholic way of seeing this.
Well, yeah, and I actually think it's important, and we talk about this a lot for this show. We make sure that we get our makeup done, obviously, and that we dress modestly, but we dress nicely, and we're concerned about an appearance, because that is important, the way you present yourself, especially if you're in ministry.
And
there
God's word, God's teachings. I mean, it should have a nice package to it.
We're ambassadors of Christ.
Ambassadors.
But there's a balance.
Exactly.
There's a balance, and I think even some women our age, and you're a little younger than us, but I see the way some of these women dress, and I'm like, really? I'm sorry, but a 50-year-old shouldn't be in a miniskirt.
Miniskirt.
Yeah, I don't think anybody should, because I don't think that.
They're crying for something, and something deeper. Like as we were saying in the previous episodes, it's something that they're crying out for, that we as women can minister to each other,
right.
and uphold. Edify each other, and really bring out what is happiness really, and what is true love, and are you really going to get that when you are presenting yourself in that way?
And what is the image that is being presented? And I find it very interesting even to look at shoes. We're seeing more and more of these very, very high heels, in terms of really the stiletto heels and the platforms, and I think it looks very suggestive. First of all, they're extremely uncomfortable. It's bad for your feet.
Any orthopedic doctor would tell you they're the worst things for you. You shouldn't be wearing them.
Exactly.
But I'm seeing younger and younger girls dressing like this, and their mothers in many ways allowing them to dress that way, and feeling pressured that they have to dress that way.
There is a connection with the culture of death, because one priest suggested that when somebody gets to a point where they're having an abortion, it might have started with the sin of immodesty. That led to sexual temptation, that
sex
led
outside
to
of marriage,
exactly.
So
this is all part
you start
of the
down
continuum.
that path,
Absolutely.
And I think like you were bringing out before, the young age that you said, 8 years old, dieting. So what we're saying is that an 8-year-old is looking around and saying, I have to be on a diet. I mean, that's...
I've had listeners email me and say that their daughters are starting to talk about it at 5 years old. So we're talking kindergarten here.
Right.
So that's already circulating in the schools at that age.
And, I'm all for a healthy eating and healthy lifestyle. We're not saying, that you don't watch what your children eat, because I can remember when I was raising my 3 daughters, I would want them to take healthy snacks to school, and they kid around that I would send them with carrots and an apple, and they would try to trade it for the Dorito chips. But, you're trying to ingrain in your children a good way of eating, healthy eating, but not to the point where they're getting almost like an anorexic mind that they got to be dieting to get so skinny,
And it's the whole the father of lies. He distorts things, that are good. When you want to feed them healthy food, are you being too fixated in that, or do you want them to diet? No, you want them to eat food, and once in a while they have a snack. That's something that they indulge in. But there's a Catholic way, I think, to understand these things, where you bring in the virtues of temperance and reverence, because we have to also remember that we're temples of the Holy Spirit. So our clothing should reflect that, and also our clothing should reflect the love that we have for others, in communicating our message. I work at a pregnancy center in downtown Los Angeles, and one of the things we really emphasize, apart from the preparation and prayer with our counselors, is how they dress. It's so important. You're going to go in there as an ambassador of Christ and an advocate for that unborn child. And if you were that unborn child, how do you want your advocate to look? The person who's going to basically be the person to try to convince your mom to not abort you. You'd like somebody who had a very nice presence, a pleasant, nicely done makeup, and
professional look.
Exactly, that reflected an interior beauty, that was there with a lot of kindness. So the whole package, as you said. So that this is so important that we understand all the implications of the choices we make every day, including the dress.
Right. And we have a saint, as we always do for each show, and I think this saint is a wonderful role model for all of us, Saint Mary Magdalene.
Well, yeah, because it shows that someone who was a sinner, a woman who was a prostitute, basically, and how her life totally turned around. Well, anyway, her feast day is July 22nd, And I know when we were researching for the shows, I think Teresa and I took a few giggles about the fact that she's considered a protector of perfumers. We said, really? I never thought of that. But anyway, in Gregory the Great's interpretation, Mary Magdalene was the repentant prostitute who anointed Jesus' feet and asked him to forgive her sins, and later becoming one of his disciples. She was present at the crucifixion and was the first witness of the resurrection. She evangelized Provence and died there. And basically, she's depicted sometimes with a very elegant dress, but sometimes she's also pictured disheveled, perhaps covered only by very, very long hair. And that's referring probably to her days as a prostitute when she was sinning. And of course, her primary attribute that they show is an ointment jar, again, anointing the feet of Jesus. And again, she's, besides protector of perfume makers, she's also the protector of gardeners
and glove makers.
And you know, her name also is from the Egyptian, means beloved. In Hebrew, which is called Miriam, means lady, and Magdalene is from the Hebrew, which means Magdala. And there's a place in a town in Israel called Magdala.
We were there, right on the Sea of Galilee.
Right on the Sea of Galilee. We were there.
She was also believed to be of means, as we learned when we were in Israel last year.
Well, I remember they say just the ointment jar, the ointment that she anointed Jesus' feet was very costly.
Right. So. And there's a lot of mixed discussion and debate, and it's not necessarily Catholic teaching that she was actually ever a prostitute. That is outside of, I mean, it's been discussed, but it really is more that she was possessed by 7 demons, and Jesus freed her from those demons. Right. Yeah, but she, I think, got a little bit of a bad rap over time.
She did.
But really is just a beautiful model for us in terms of what the love of God can do for you from the inside out.
And her extreme love, her outpouring of love to him for having forgiven her sins.
I love that, because there's several places where she's not actually named, but we were taught through Catholic teaching and understanding of Scripture that she is the one with the alabaster jar and then anointing the feet with his feet with her tears. So it's quite a beautiful image. When we come back, we are going to hear from a very special ministry that I encountered when I was actually doing a talk on modesty at a young girls fashion show in Flint, Michigan. This was about 2 years ago, and I met this wonderful woman who works with another woman, and actually they've been a part of this series that we're doing this year on Catholic Youth for Women. It's called Good Girl Comeback, and part of that ministry is talking to young girls about presenting themselves beautifully, fashionably, but modestly. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to this episode of the Catholic View for Women on the Body Image Blues. Been there, done that, bought the t-shirt at one time or another. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Astrid Bennett Gutierrez and Janet Morana, and really discussing how to present ourselves and put our best faith and shoes forward for the Lord in a modest way. There's nothing wrong with that. It can be modest and well-balanced. As a matter of fact, we're going to go to a clip right now of a young woman that I had the opportunity to interview in my Archdiocese of Detroit. And as I said, I met this ministry, came across this beautiful ministry when I was speaking in the Flint area and doing a talk at a fashion show for girls, a modesty fashion show. And what we talked to these women about is, okay, so how has it gotten this bad? Why has it gotten this bad? What can we do about it? And how do we help these young girls really put their best faith and face forward for the Lord?
You know, they know what I'm talking about. I don't have any parents saying my daughter doesn't know what sex is. And that was something I was afraid of at the beginning. You know, how far is too far? And all the moms that I have spoken to are saying they already know. They already know from what they hear at school, from what they see on TV, from the internet. They know what's going on. And I would rather them hear the truth than them figure it out themselves. So I'm very appreciative of that, because I was nervous about, you know, getting at those younger girls, because in my eyes, I would rather talk to them before they try to figure it out themselves and before they start forming the opinions from what they see on TV and the internet and all the other places that they can find information. So trying to get at them before that is what I love. But then also when I'm talking to the high school girls too, whether or not they've already made choices that they wish they hadn't or whatever their individual position that they're in, they still eat it up as well. I mean, every girl that comes through at some point in the day, I can just tell that they're taking this information in because the truth is attractive. And I definitely see that every single time. Oh, it's very important because there are so many people out there who are giving the opposite message I am, that are using all of the modern day powers. They're using the internet, they're using TV, they're using radio, they're using their beauty, they're using everything to get at our youth, but to teach them a different lesson. So in my mind, I'm trying to do the same thing, but telling them the positive message and the truth. So, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I have my blog, I have my website, and I present myself in the most attractive way possible because I want to use every single thing that will attract a young girl to the good girl comeback and to the positive message that it's giving. Oh, absolutely. I mean, the thing that breaks my heart the most is when girls come up to me afterward and said, if only I would have heard this message 3 months ago. Or no one ever told me this. Why didn't anybody ever share this with me? And of course I cover the beauty of, forgiveness and healing and everything in each conference because that's an important part of it, especially for girls who have already done things that they wish they hadn't. But, it's tough to hear that they're not hearing this, but in being close to their generation, I can totally understand why. It's not something that's out there, and unless you're looking for it, which, if we're honest, how many teen girls are really pursuing the truth at that age? They're not going to find it. It's not going to fall in front of their faces. So that's why at the end of every Good Girl Comeback, I go in and thank the parents for sending the girls because they wouldn't have come on their own for the first time. Maybe down the road they will, but the first time it is the parents that are getting them there. And I appreciate that because then they're able to hear the truth, which they're not going to stumble across it by turning on the TV, that's for sure. And I share a lot of my own story and a lot of facts and statistics to back it up. But I think when you just share honestly and you level with the girls, and I always try my best not to talk to them as if I'm their teacher and they're my student, or I'm just giving them info and they have to listen. I want them to be able to relate and to understand. And especially when it comes to the purity aspect of it, I just want them to understand that what they're looking for, which is love, they are never going to find by having multiple partners and by looking for love through sex. And when they're honest with themselves and say, yeah, in a future dating relationship and a marriage, that is what I'm looking for, then how can they not accept that? And I give them all the facts and statistics behind it, but just letting them know that what they're looking for is only going to be found down this path is what really breaks the barrier and helps them to understand.
Yeah, it's interesting. Parents and that influence is so important. I remember seeing a study a while back that despite the influence of the culture and friends, that if a parent is involved in their child's life, their influence is still very, very strong.
That's
and I'm
right.
sure, Mom, you have three daughters.
I raised 3 daughters, and what you have to think about, and I have to appeal to the moms out there, just say no sometimes. I mean, you got to say no. First of all, where are they getting the money to buy the clothing that's inappropriate? Well, if you're giving them the money and you're letting them buy it, then you're at fault too. I mean, I can remember taking my daughter shopping and go, no, you know, not that rack, no, over here, no, that's too short, no, you can't wear that, oh, not for church, can't do this. I mean, you have to give them guidance. How else are they going to know? Because, like we just said, the secular world's got all the garbage out there, the skimpy this and the skimpy that. Well, you've got to set the tone.
And you buy the clothes too.
Well,
you know?
yeah, I mean, you take them shopping, but you got to give the guidance and say no. I mean, there was plenty of times there was some tears in the store, or you know, they weren't quite thrilled. But you know, they're now in their 30s. They're all three of them happily married, so I guess they survived mommy saying no more than once or twice. You know, it's love. You're loving them by saying no. It's by giving in to the whining. You know, it's harder to say no. It's easier to give in to the whining. And so I feel for mothers, you know, you got to pray about it. You know, pray, Lord, please give me the strength. Because some days are tough. I raised three daughters.
And it is tough because when you go into the, let's admit it, ladies, when you go into the in the malls, it's tough because the choices are limited.
Right.
All these clothing lines that they push. And for example, 2 years ago, Madonna's daughter, Lourdes, came out with this line called Material Girl in Macy's. Have you seen some of these items? I did a column on it. I wrote a piece on it.
They're hard.
I mean, the bustiers and the mini skirts and the lace and it's like we're talking about teenage girls here.
They look like prostitutes putting on that stuff.
Yeah,
and they look like, you know, they're ready to go to bed with somebody or lure someone into bed. And this is for young girls.
That's the whole idea, though. As I was saying earlier, the shoe
and that's what I'm
styles and
saying. Moms, come on, you've got to take control of what goes on in your home. You know, they don't have big fancy jobs, these kids that are buying all these clothes. They're getting some of the money from mom and dad, and you've got to really set some guidelines.
It takes work. You have to. It's just like anything else, just like monitoring the kids' media habits, which I talk about a lot. It takes work.
Yeah.
But anything worth having is worth fighting for. And what was so great about this fashion show that I went to, and that these events that the Good Girl Comeback Ministry does, is that they give the families tips on how to dress, and they had some adorable clothes that were just really, really nice, very sharp, very colorful, but they were modest, and the girls looked great.
Yeah, they actually look very attractive.
They want to be fashionable, they want to fit in, but there's a way to do it when you also have the other's soul in mind, and how you're being perceived is important.
Well, I tell you, I enjoyed the fact that all three of my daughters went to Catholic high school because they had to wear a uniform.
Yes.
Boy, that's so true, because I went to a Catholic grade school and we had uniforms, and it was so easy. And then when I started going to high school, and I was always trying to push the envelope, surprise, surprise. One morning I snuck into my parents' bedroom because they had a big wall-to-wall, like a mirror over their dresser, so you could see what you look like. So I snuck in, and I had a skimpy t-shirt on and a tight pair of jeans. I was trying to see if I can get away with it, right? My father, who was so mellow, so laid back, and my mother was more the disciplinarian, he shot out of bed so fast. Young lady, you get in there and you change. You are not walking out the door in that outfit. Get some clothes on.
That's right.
Daddy, I have one. And I changed.
That's
so,
right.
Never tried to get away with that again.
You know, and again, you know, it goes down to even the magazines that you're letting them buy and have
you ever seen Cosmo Girl?
Oh, forget